2 incomes, stable jobs, no financial crisis. Yet millions of couples reach their 40s with almost nothing saved. This isn't bad luck. It's something economists call the 2-income trap. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. 2 people get married. Both have jobs. Both are earning decent money. Not rich, but comfortable by most reasonable standards. They combine their incomes, move into a nicer apartment, buy a second car, maybe upgrade their phones, their wardrobes, their weekends. And somewhere in the back of their minds, they both believe, quietly, almost unconsciously, that 2 incomes means they are now twice as financially secure. 10 years later, they have almost nothing saved. Not because they were irresponsible, not because something catastrophic happened, but because of a pattern so common, so normalized, that most people living inside it never actually see it. It has a name. Economists call it the 2-income trap. And once you understand how it works, you will look at dual-income households, including your own if that applies, in a very different way.
Let's follow someone through this. Her name is Claire. She's 31 years old, lives in a mid-sized American city, let's say Columbus, Ohio. She works in marketing, earns around $62,000 a year. Her husband, Daniel, is in IT support, pulling in $58,000. Combined gross income, $120,000 a year. That sounds solid. In most of the country, that puts them in the upper half of household earners. On paper, this looks like the definition of financial stability. After federal taxes, state taxes, and payroll deductions, their combined take-home is roughly $84,000 annually, about $7,000 a month. Now let's look at where that money actually goes. Rent, $1,850 for a 2-bedroom apartment in a decent part of the city. They talked about buying a house, but with current interest rates and home prices, the monthly payment on something comparable would be closer to $2,400, so they're renting for now. 2 car payments, both financed because they needed reliable transportation, total $980 per month. Insurance on both cars, $310. Student loans. Claire has $28,000 remaining on her undergraduate degree, paying $290 a month. Daniel has $19,000, paying $220 a month. That's $510 in student loans. Groceries, utilities, internet, phone bills, approximately $900 a month. Health insurance premiums, not fully covered by their employers, $480 combined. And then there's the everyday spending. The lunches, the streaming subscriptions, the gym memberships, the occasional weekend trip, the Amazon purchases that seem small individually but add up to somewhere between $600 and $900 a month. Total monthly outflow, somewhere between $5,530 and $5,730. Which leaves them with, generously, about $1,270 to $1,470 per month for savings, investments, or anything else. That's around 17 to 21% of their take-home. Not terrible, technically. Financial guidelines often suggest saving 20%. They're close to that on paper. But here's the thing. They're not saving $1,270 a month because that number assumes everything goes according to plan, and life rarely does. What Claire and Daniel experienced, what millions of dual-income households experience, is a slow-moving financial squeeze that accelerates precisely because of the second income. And this is where things quietly change, not dramatically, but structurally. This is the counterintuitive part. The second income doesn't just add money, it adds costs, and it adds them in ways that feel completely rational at every single step. When Claire was single and earning $62,000, she had a smaller apartment, 1 car, lower rent, more modest spending habits. She wasn't wealthy, but her financial exposure, the amount of income she needed every month just to stay functional, was much lower. When she and Daniel combined their incomes, their lifestyle adjusted upward to match. This is called lifestyle inflation, but that term makes it sound like a personal failure. It isn't. It's a structural response to a structural change. More income arriving in a household signals, in every economic and psychological sense, that more spending is now appropriate. The market agrees. Landlords price units accordingly. Dealers offer larger financing packages. Banks extend more credit. The entire system recalibrates around your new combined number. The problem is what happens if that number changes. If one income disappears, a layoff, a health issue, a pregnancy, a parent needing care, the household doesn't revert to one person's pre-marriage financial footprint. It inherits the full cost structure of a two-income life funded by one income, and that gap is often catastrophic.
Elizabeth Warren, before she became a senator, co-authored a book in 2003 called The Two-Income Trap with her daughter Amelia Warren Tyagi. The core argument was this: American families in the 1970s, largely operating on one income, had more financial resilience than dual-income families in the early 2000s, not because they earned more in real terms, but because their fixed costs were lower relative to their income, and they retained a second income as a financial safety net. By the time both incomes are fully committed to a lifestyle, there is no safety net left. You've spent your buffer before you've earned it. Let's put some numbers to this. Claire and Daniel are on paper saving around $15,000 a year, but in reality, after irregular expenses, a car repair, a medical bill, a flight home for a family emergency, a broken appliance, that number is probably closer to $8,000 to $10,000 most years.
Over 10 years, assuming they invest that $9,000 annual average at a 7% annual return, they'd accumulate roughly $124,000. Not nothing, but for two people who earned a combined $1.2 million over that decade before taxes, walking away with $124,000 in investable assets represents an effective savings rate of about 10% of gross income, far below what retirement models suggest they need. Meanwhile, their student loan interest, at an average of 6%, has cost them around $14,000 in interest payments over those same 10 years. Their car financing, cycling through two vehicles each over a decade, has likely cost them another $18,000 to $22,000 in interest and depreciation that they'll never recover. The money was there. It passed through their accounts, but it passed through very quickly and in directions that didn't build anything durable. Why does this happen with such consistency across different cities, different income levels, different countries?
Part of it is social comparison. Claire follows people on Instagram and LinkedIn who seem to be living well, people who eat at nice restaurants, take good vacations, drive presentable cars. Most of those people are also stretched, but the visible signal is comfort, not the debt service underneath it. If this feels familiar, it's not because people are careless. It's because humans are wired this way. There's a concept in behavioral economics called relative deprivation. The idea that what we feel we need is largely calibrated by what the people around us appear to have. It isn't vanity exactly, it's a deeply embedded social mechanism. For most of human history, falling behind your peer group materially had real consequences. That instinct doesn't disappear because the context has changed. And then there's the planning fallacy, our tendency to underestimate future costs and overestimate future capacity to deal with them. Claire and Daniel both know, intellectually, that they should be saving more, but there's always a reason the right time to get serious about it is slightly later, after the car is paid off, after the raise, after they move to a cheaper place. The future self will handle it. The future self almost never gets the chance because by the time it arrives, it has inherited new obligations. The compounding effect of this pattern isn't dramatic. It doesn't look like a crisis from the inside. It looks like a normal life, lived slightly beyond its means perpetually. At 45, Claire and Daniel will likely have more income, more expenses, possibly a mortgage, possibly children in college, and a retirement account balance that requires either a very fortunate final decade of compounding or a significantly delayed retirement. This isn't hypothetical. Surveys of American and European workers consistently show that median retirement savings for people in their late 40s and 50s are far below what financial models suggest they'll need. The dual-income household is often where that gap lives, not in low-income households who never had the capacity to save, and not in high-income households with large enough margins to absorb lifestyle inflation, but in the middle, where two incomes created the illusion of financial security without the substance of it. People who navigate this differently aren't operating on a different moral plane. They're not more disciplined in some abstract sense. What they tend to have is a clearer awareness of the gap between income and actual financial progress, and a willingness to treat the second income, or some meaningful portion of it, as structurally unavailable. Some households, when a second income arrives, deliberately keep their lifestyle anchored to one income for a defined period. Not forever, not as a sacrifice, but as a conscious choice to build a margin before expanding into it. The second income routes to savings, debt reduction, or investment until certain conditions are met: a specific emergency fund threshold, a certain amount of retirement savings, a paid-off debt. Then, and only then, do they allow the lifestyle to expand incrementally. It's not a glamorous framework. It doesn't make for a good Instagram post, but it's one of the clearest differences between households that build something durable and those that simply earn more while remaining equally exposed. The two-income trap isn't a moral failure. It's not the result of bad decisions made by bad people. It's the predictable outcome of a system that prices housing, transportation, credit, and education against the assumption that most adults in their 30s and 40s will have two incomes working at full capacity, indefinitely. It scales your costs up to your ceiling and then removes the margin that was supposed to protect you. Claire and Daniel aren't in a crisis. They're fine, by most measures. But fine isn't the same as resilient. And understanding the difference, before a layoff, before an illness, before the moment when one income has to carry two people's cost structure, is worth more than most financial advice you'll encounter. The real danger isn't earning too little. It's allowing your lifestyle to rise so fast that your second income never has the chance to build security. That's the two-income trap, and most people don't realize they're in it until decades have passed. If you value realistic, psychology-driven finance insights like this, consider subscribing.